When it comes to tracking calories, there's three things that I see people get tripped up on all the time. And of course, it's the same three mistakes that I made when I first came to trying to lose weight and tracking my calories. And the first thing that I got wrong is that I tried to eyeball as much as I can. When I say eyeball, what I mean is you have a little bit of a look at that and you think, that's about 100 grams of pasta. That's about 50 grams of pesto. That's whatever it is. Now the problem with that is, honestly, we're not as good at that as we think we are. And at the very start, that's even more true. So if you go through a period of time where you are really deliberate, really diligent with tracking every single thing, with weighing as much as you possibly can. Now, you might be shouting out and saying, but hey, I can't do that when I'm eating out. And you're right. When you're eating out, we're going to have to estimate it slightly differently. But when we're at home, where we're in full control, we want to weigh things as often as possible so we get a better understanding of where our calories actually are and the portion sizes that we should be having. The second mistake I see people make is when they go for a meal out and they underestimate the amount of calories in that meal out. And this usually happens for one of two reasons. Now, the first one is that people just assume that the chicken fajitas that they make at home are exactly the same as the chicken fajitas they're eating out and having. And the reality is at home, you're going to be pretty sensible with the things that you put into your food. You're going to probably be quite sensible with sauces and cheeses and all these things. You're not going to use a lot of oil in a pan when you're cooking. You're not going to be excessive with those types of things. However, when you go to a restaurant, they have one job, which is to make the food really bloody tasty, which often means more calories, more sauces, often a little bit more generous with the sauces and the fat content of them. There's more oil in the food you're eating. All of these things tend to add up. And the second part of that people get wrong is they just equate it to something they bought in a shop. I've seen this before where someone has put in like a ready-made curry as an example for a meal out they had. Now there's no way that those calories are going to be that similar. Chances are when you have a curry out as a meal, it's probably going to be a lot higher in calories. So one of those two mistakes is really common. And if you are on your own weight loss journey right now, just like I was when I dropped 20 kilos, you can grab my free fat loss plan in the description, which takes you through the exact steps I followed to drop just over 20 kilos and lose a life-changing amount of weight. And the third thing that people often get wrong is something that I was more than a little guilty of when I first started tracking. And that was that I would pick the lowest entry every single time. So if I went in and I saw something that said, let's say lasagna, I would pick the very bottom entry. Obviously if it said 2 calories, I probably wouldn't pick that. But if there was a 400, a 500 and a 650 calorie option, you can bet that I was picking the 400 calorie option. Now of course, in reality, it was probably almost always at the upper end and not at the lower end. So I would be much better picking the middle at minimum or indeed the top end as well. And that's what I'd recommend you do, is if you're not quite sure where it's going to be, then I would just pick slightly above. I would pick that middle option and then add 10% to it in terms of your portion size, or just to opt for the higher end, because at least that way your bases are covered. Because there's no point being in a weight loss phase and kidding yourself on. Because if you are just not bothering to weigh everything, like we talked about in that first common error, that's not going to work. If you're eyeballing everything, it's going to slow you down. If you then go for meals out and you're just assuming that they cook it the same way you do at home, well, you're losing a lot of calories there that actually are going to make a big difference. And then of course, if you also then pick the lowest entry you come across, that's so much inaccuracy that you're just going to struggle flat out to make progress. And it's a bit of a harsh truth, but when it comes to tracking calories, 60 to 70% effort tends to get you 20 to 30% results, if that. Whereas when someone's really diligent with their calorie tracking accuracy, they can often eat more calories than they first thought they would be able to, and also they're going to make far better progress because what they're tracking is as accurate as it could possibly be. So if there was one thing that I would change about my own journey with fat loss that would have sped things up and stopped me wasting so much bloody time and got that 20 kilos off much quicker, it would have been being more deliberate with how accurate my tracking was at the start. Now, if you want to see the exact process I used to drop that 20 kilos, check out the description for that free fat loss guide. And if you want to see what I'm doing for my current fast weight loss phase, where I'm trying to pull off 8 kilos in just 8 weeks, then you can watch that right here.